Yara, can you bring the lights down, please? Leo, I'll be doing this presentation. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody ready? That's the moment. That's the moment that you want to achieve all the time, where you've brought the audience with you on a journey, you've brought them somewhere, you stop and you make them want to know where to go next. And that's the moment we had yesterday with Mons' documentary when it stopped before the end of the script. We were following a pattern, and then it stopped. And all of a sudden we were tense, but we also paid full attention to what's going on. And all the way through your feature, in your script and in your audio, you want that to happen. And there's one way to prove to yourself that that's working, and that's to stop your audio at a certain point and say, does the listener want to hear more? Have I actually set it up that there's a tension there? So that moment, that pause, if you have that pause, if you own that pause, you control the listener. You tell the listener where they're going to go, and people like that. And the other reason you do it is because in that gap, in that pause, even though it's a fraction of a second, the listener's mind rushes in. The listener rushes in with ideas, with memories, with notions. Even with another clap, is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? And in doing that, in encouraging the listener to rush in and try and answer what's coming next, you allow the listener to fully take part in the telling of the story. You allow the listener to put their own pictures in, their own memories, their own attitudes. And that allows them to own the story. And that's why people feel radio is theirs, much more than they feel it about television. So pauses, slowing down the control of information, controlling the flow of information, making sure that you don't give them too much at the same time. So for example, you don't give somebody a box of chocolates. What you do is you take out a chocolate, or you offer them one chocolate at a time. You don't do the crazy waiter, where you come to the table and you drop all the food on the table and you give them their dessert and their coffee at the same time. You do the nice waiter. You take your radio food and you offer it the starter, the soup, the main course, if you're uncivilized, cheese, and dessert if you're civilized, dessert and cheese. You understand? You offer your food slowly. You offer everything slowly. And there's examples of this everywhere. Classic example is horror movies. In horror movies, they have a thing called the sound drop. So you've got your scary moments happening, there's a creepy guy hanging around the house, the woman is lying in the bed, the creepy guy gets into the house. You've got lots of sound, lots and lots of information, and then all of a sudden, everything goes quiet. Now are you awake? They do it in music. In music it's actually called a drop. In dance music it's called a drop, where they beat, 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 pause, beat, 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 beat. This is Fergie.
So we don't dance until we drop, a little party that will kill nobody. Right here, right now, don't we get?
Skip, It happens in sport, in set pieces in sport, during a soccer match, in the penalty, the flow of the game is going, game is going, game is going. Somebody commits a foul in the penalty box. The whole place stops. There's a piece of theatre, a man stands back, he has to kick a ball, see does he get it into the net. The whole place is looking at that ball. They're not looking at the people near them, beside them. This is what you want in your feature. You want everybody looking at the ball that you want them to look at. In Belfast, in Northern Ireland, they have a really interesting phenomenon in rugby, where when somebody is kicking a kick, the whole stadium goes quiet. In France, in rugby, when somebody is kicking a kick, it's lots and lots of noise, same in Italy. But in Belfast, 40,000 people, when a man is about to kick a ball between the posts, the whole place goes quiet. The tension is incredible.
Penalty against Leinster. see from before. That sounds okay for that here. And looks even better from down there. So for the very first...
So the best waiters, the best people at delivering food in radio are often our presenters. They're the people who understand that you don't be the crazy waiter and throw everything at them, that you give them the stuff slowly. So for example, here's a DJ on Irish radio. He's introducing a record. He just doesn't go, here's a record. He makes you want to listen to the record. And you remember what I said about the rule? If you stop the audio, does the listener want to hear more? So I'm going to stop him and you'll see how he has structured his introduction. And all he's doing is playing a record.
Now, I've been wanting to hear this album for the last while, and...
Now, I've been wanting to hear this album for the last while. Do you want to know what the album is? Of course. Why does he want to hear it? What's so special about the album? It's just a piece of music. But no, it's a piece of music that he has decided to say, actually, I've been wanting to hear this album for the last while. He's made a story about wanting to hear the album.
Now, I've been wanting to hear this album for the last while, and I finally did over the weekend. It's the new one from Bob Mould.
On a phone-in show, a man rings in, he wants to complain about the traffic. So the presenter, his name is Ernie, he doesn't say, Ernie, you want to talk about the traffic. No, he sets up Ernie. He says to the audience, this is Ernie. Ernie has something he wants to say about the traffic. And this is only a couple of seconds long, but listen how the presenter makes you want to hear what Ernie has to say.
Ernie is in Kilkenny. Ernie, you were driving to Waterford. Are you exasperated, astonished, or just annoyed?
Right, so we know that Ernie feels emotional about the traffic in Waterford. It's only a drive, but no, he feels emotional. Not only that, but he's offered 3 choices of emotion. Are you exasperated, annoyed, or frustrated? News is really hard. It's straight information. You have to be po-faced and serious. Only the best people in school do news. Only the most serious people in school do news. And yet, you can actually sit in a news studio with a computer and make the listeners want to hear what's coming next by not saying to them, straight into the story, by saying to them, I want to tell you a story, but first, before I tell you the story, I want to switch on my computer and have a look at YouTube.
YouTube, as anyone who's ever looked will know, is a place where you find everything from the wonderful to the truly weird. I'm just turning it on now on my computer and I see.
Do you want to hear more? Yes, you want to hear more. I'm just turning on my computer and what do I see? He could see nothing on his computer, but he doesn't say he doesn't see nothing on his computer. He says, I'm just turning on my computer now and what do I see?
A man standing beside a group of chimpanzees and his contribution asking the truly intriguing question, if you've nothing better to do, are human Z's possible? Anyway, moving right along, more seriously, one of the recent hits...
That was a 20-second intro into an item that was about something entirely different, but because the item that was about to be played was boring, he decided to make the introduction interesting. So at least you stayed to listen to the item. One of the greatest sources of stories in radio that's discounted is the SMS message, the text message. We read them out all the time and sometimes we throw them away, but sometimes we actually stand back and take the message and structure it like a story. And this is a text message on an Irish radio station. It only takes 17 seconds to read the message. But the way the message is structured, either by the listener who texted it in, or by the producer who took what the listener was texting in and rewrote it, is really well structured. So if you have a listen to this, it's the story of somebody who is going to New York to get married. But listen to the way that the presenter, in telling you about the person going to New York to get married, serves out the information. Now it's not slowly, but at least you only get it piecemeal.
In New York, on the song New York by Alicia Keys, Ryan, that song was very poignant for me this morning. Myself and my partner decided last night to go to New York in January, lovely, and get married there, even better, without telling anyone. What?
So they're going to New York. When did they decide to go to New York? Last night. They decided to go, and to do what? To get married. And then they didn't tell anybody. He serves out the information bit by bit. Okay, so telling stories. We're good at telling stories, but a lot of the time we forget how to tell the stories. And when we're very, very young, we know how to tell the stories. So for example, I'm sitting in the car, and my grandson sits in the back of the car, and my grandson is 4 years of age. And 6 months ago, my grandson told me things. He'd go, Anna and Elsa, Scooby-Doo, zombies, Batman, Dora the Explorer. All the information came out like that into the back of my head while I'm driving the car. Now that he's 4 years of age, he sits in the back of the car and he goes, "Grandad, I want to tell you something." And what he's doing there is he's beckoning me to the story. He's saying, "Grandad, I want to tell you something," but he's also stopping me. He's stopping me from hearing the story because he wants me to wait. He wants me to know what the story is. And where did he learn that technique? He learned it from adults. He learned it from us telling stories. We never take a children's storybook and throw it at the children. We always open the book and we invite them and we say, "Once upon a time." And once upon a time is a beckoning, but it's also a pause. It's also saying to them, "You must wait." Zagarami zalasami. Es war einmal. Il était une fois. We always pause and we wait. But part of the problem is, once we teach them that technique, as children get older, then they forget it. And you take, for example, you're sitting in your kitchen. This is Anna's kitchen, by the way, in Katowice, because we were here the other day. You're sitting in your kitchen, and you hear the sound of a car crash outside. You hear two cars crashing, and you're going, "Oh, I thought I heard the sound of a car crash outside." And your teenage son comes in. "Did I hear a car crash?" "I thought I heard two cars crashing outside." "I don't know." Your teenage daughter comes in. "Oh my God! You'll never believe what happened! You know that woman who lives up the road? You know the one with the mad hair? You know she has too much makeup. You always say she has too much makeup and her husband has big ears. You know that woman up the road? You know the way she's always putting on the makeup when she drives her car? You know what happened?" Your teenage daughter still knows how to tell stories. She still knows how to parcel out the stories. So if you want to know how to tell the stories, you look at the young people. And part of the reason that we've lost our stories, our storytelling, is because of computers. Because when we sit down on the computer, we get back into college mode. We get back into school mode. We're packing as much information down as quickly as possible because we have to get to the end of the exam. And it's even worse now that we cut with software, with waveforms. Because a lot of the time now when we're cutting the picture of the sound rather than the sound of the sound. When you couldn't see the waveform, when you worked in tape, your eyes were closed. You couldn't see what was happening. So you had to listen to the rhythm of the person talking. So this person would talk at a certain rhythm, and you wouldn't stop the tape at the end of the person talking on their last word. You would stop it at the last beat after the person talked. So the person talked, they talked at a certain rate, they stopped talking, and then you stop the tape. You controlled the flow of the information. And part of the problem now is that people are jamming the words together because they're just putting it visually. Here's another example from Irish radio. It's a piece about South Korea, an island in South Korea. Have a listen to the way this was obviously cut, just jamming the words together. It was cut on a software.
The whole island is basically a military fortress. Concertina wire fences and cement walls line most of the north coast. Iron rods jet out of the sand on one beach to prevent North Korean ships.
Slow down! Too much information. Too fast. Watch what happens if you take that same piece and you put in some pauses. You slow it down. You give the listener a chance to get the images into their head and give them a chance to react.
The whole island is basically a military fortress. Concertina wire fences and cement walls line most of the north coast. Iron rods jet out of the sand on one beach to prevent North Korean ships from coming to shore.
The other group of people, if you want to retrieve the ability to tell stories that you should listen to and that you should pay attention to, are older people. And that's because older people have been telling the same stories for so many years that they've polished the stories. The good ones. They've watched the audience reaction. Some older people tell the same stories over and over again. Their kids just go, "Oh man, not again, same story." But older people who are good at storytelling polish their stories. And they make sure that they deliver the cliffhangers and they make sure that they respect the pauses. This is a piece from an American series called StoryCorps. And in StoryCorps, they travel around America and they invite pairs of people to come in and tell stories. So it might be a grandfather telling a story to a grandson, or a sister telling a story to another sister, and they record those. And it's similar to the Listening Project on the BBC. And this is a story being told by a man who's 85 years of age. His name is William Jacobs, and he's talking about just before when he got married in 1947. Now, marriage in 1947, for a lot of people, for example, would be the first time they would have sex. And for a lot of people would also, especially women, the main reason you would get married, one of the main reasons you would get married, would be to have a family, to have children. So William Jacobs, this man, is telling this story from 1947, about just before when he got married. Remember the rule: if you stop the audio, does the listener want to hear more? So I'm going to play this audio. And an interesting thing is, he uses a little device, a little sort of beckoning, pausing device, that's exactly the same as my grandson's. He says, I want to tell you something. So this is William Jacobs.
In comes Mrs. Grubber, which is the name that I knew Claire's mother by. And she said, I have to tell you some things. She said, I heard Claire on the telephone last night saying how happy she was, and she's talking about we're going to have babies and so on and so forth. And I have to tell you something.
You want to hear more? Yes. Yes. What does he want to tell them? What else is going on? What did I say earlier on about the gap? In the fraction of a second it takes him to say, I have to tell you something, pause. What is the listener doing? You're putting images there. You can see this woman on the phone in a print dress. This maybe dark wood surrounding in the house. She's very excited. Her voice is very animated. You can see her mother is in the other room. She's listening to the woman talking about having babies. And you've all those images, and in that fraction of a second, you're putting those images into that story, and you're owning that story. So we want to hear more? Okay, so the mother hears her saying that she's looking forward to having babies when she gets married.
Claire cannot have children. She cannot conceive. She had never made Claire aware of this and wanted to know if I was willing to marry her anyhow. And I said, yes, Mrs. Grubber, I am ready to marry her anyhow. And she took a deep breath and she said, Billy, then I want to ask you something else.
We go home? See you? That was good. What are you doing now? You're immediately going, oh my God, what's she going to ask? 3, 4 different things. I knew a woman who this happened to. I saw a piece in the paper that happened to. You're putting all that information in there, and you're also, what else are you doing? What have I just done now? Just paused. What else are you doing? You're paying attention to the story. You're not just washing the dishes. You're not just talking. You're stopping. You're listening to the story, because he has built in the pauses into his story.
Would you be willing to adopt children? And I said, yes, Mrs. Grubber, I would be glad to adopt children, and I would do so. And she's very relieved, and she says, I only have one other question then, Billy.
Will I stop it, or will I just let her answer?
How are we going to tell Claire? And I said, Mrs. Grubber, I will tell her myself on our wedding night. And that's what happened.
Isn't that amazing? Now the images in your head are of a young woman sitting on a bed in a hotel room in a nightie that she chose. And when she was choosing it, she was thinking about what her wedding night was going to be like. And the last thing on her mind was that her new husband was going to say, guess what? You can't have children. Okay, so listen to the old people, listen to the young people, and that way you'll retrieve your ability to tell stories. So how do you build in the pauses? There's loads of ways to build in the pauses. There's loads of ways to control the information that's coming in the story. One of them, for example, is the absence of sound. The silences. We heard it in the horror movie, we heard it in the football match. You let the silence sit. For this next piece, if you are an animal lover, I want you to put your fingers in your ears, because this is the story of a dog dying. And we had a problem in Ireland several years ago that people weren't sterilising their pets. So their pets were going out and making more dogs and more cats, and made a lot of stray dogs and a lot of stray cats, and they had to be put down. And they would be caught, they had to be killed. After a week, somebody would kill them. So one of the vets, who was very, very upset about this, called in a radio reporter and said, I want to show you what happens to the dogs. People don't sterilise their animals. Look what happens to the dogs. So she recorded, but listen towards the end what she does with the silence. Listen to the way she doesn't stamp all over the silence. That she lets the silence sit, and the silence tells the story.
That's quite quick. We're just injecting the phenylbarbital into the vein on the front leg, and it works the same as an anaesthetic. And the dog literally just lies down and goes to sleep. Except with this, it's a lethal dose that he gets. But it's the same principle as an anaesthetic, and you can see now he's just gone off to sleep, and respirations in the heart have now stopped.
that's it.
And that's it, I'm afraid.
So the dog stopped whining, and then for 5 seconds she didn't say anything. And that was the sound of the dog being gone. And she didn't go, oh, the dog is dead. She just stayed quiet. She shut up. Another way of controlling the flow is by putting in non-verbal utterances, putting in the kind of sounds that we would normally cut out. Somebody mentioned the other day in the programme about Prague, the way they left in the sounds of the interviewer asking, could the old lady hear what she was saying? It humanised it. In this case, it also slows it down. So if you put in ums and ahs and all those kind of sounds, normally people don't talk the way we present them on the radio. You know, we cut them tight, we make them fast, we get to the point quickly, we try and make it accessible. But in some cases, by putting in those sounds, putting in those bodily sounds, those non-verbal utterances, those non-words, you're slowing it down, you're delivering the meal slowly. So here's a very good example, because it has a contrast in it. It's a story a colleague of mine named Nicolene did about 2 little boys who lived in the Philippines during the Second World War, and the Japanese took their parents and killed their parents. The 2 little boys were rescued and were brought back to Ireland. And one of the little boys became a very successful businessman, much in control of his life. Everything was going fine. He wanted to tell the story and he approached it, but he wanted to tell the story as he had written it. So when Nicolene went to interview him, the nightmare for any feature producer, and you've all been there, is when you go to interview somebody and they pull out the pages of the answers they're going to give you to your questions, and they lay them out on the table and they start reading them. So Nicolene let the man read the answers to the questions that she wanted to ask him about being a child in the Philippines before his parents were taken by the Japanese. But then, when he was finished reading, she asked him questions that she wanted answers to. And listen to the way she left in the non-words. And listen to how they actually tell a story in themselves.
My father, Oliver John Shannon, as he was called, he came from County Meath. And the Shannon family itself originally came from County Clare, but our branch eventually migrated. John and Michael did not appear to have suffered physically from their ordeal, though both had bad coughs on arrival in Manila, and we must surely be the most fortunate of sons.
Right, okay. Can we, just to rewind, I was just wondering to get a picture of your parents. I mean, you were only 9 when all that happened, but what's your memory of the kind of people that they were, your mum and your dad?
That's difficult, because I don't have very clear memories of them. Well, thinking back to my memories of my mother and father, I don't really have very clear recollections. I can remember my father teaching me how to do some card tricks. I remember him teaching me how to dry myself properly after a shower. I can remember him telling me, there's very little actually.
He can't remember his parents. And the way he says he can't remember his parents is not by saying, I can't remember. It's by going, a man who's in control of his life, who's a very successful businessman, has no words to talk about the fact that he can't remember his parents. We're running a bit late. Sound effects is another way, putting in sound, slowing down the story, putting in sound effects, putting in scenes. The other way to do it, the most dangerous way of slowing it down, is music. We could have a whole lecture of music. Music can screw up your program. Music can take the listener in the place you don't want to go because the listener owns the music in a way that you don't intend them to own it. Sometimes the music works. This is a documentary made by Liam and Tim, who are here, and it was about a man who sang Elvis. He was an Elvis impersonator. And at the opening of the documentary, they use the music to slow down the information that he's giving you. He's telling you about how he feels about Elvis. He's telling you about his obsession with Elvis. But what he tells you could be told in about 20 seconds, but they make it last and they stitch it into the music, and in the way they do it, it makes you understand why Elvis is so important to him.
I love the build-up in my gut beforehand when I come out on the stage, when you hear the 2001 A Space Odyssey. I always loved Elvis. I had a couple of videos. I mean, Elvis 56, Elvis Aloha from Hawaii, Elvis That's the Way It Is, Elvis on Tour, Elvis this, Elvis that. You know, and I couldn't get away from it. I love the sideburns today, by the way. You know, but I shaved them off. I grew goatee beards. I tried to get away from it, but I couldn't. When the drummer is backing me on the stage, his eyes are on me. He's not looking at the drums. If I move my hand this way, or if I do that, da-da-da-da, the big finish, the brass section, and the crowd are there, and the lights are down, and the band, and they have timpanis, and the crowd starts screaming, and next thing you're out there, and you're singing. There's no turning back from then on. It's just keep going. Oh, see what you have done. I said, see, rider. Oh, see what you have done. Well, you made me love you, and now the man is gone. Hear what I say? So that's the opening song, C.C. Rider.
And then the last way I'm going to talk to you about of slowing down the flow of information, of not being the crazy waiter and of delivering the radio food slowly, is what they call in movies is parallel cutting. You take two stories, and instead of telling this story all the way and telling that story all the way, you slow it down. You tell a bit of this story, a bit of that story, a bit of this story, a bit of that story. And the piece I'm going to play has a connection with a couple of people here. It's a piece called The Kiss by Caitlin Prest. And it tells the story of a woman who has a man in her bed. And the man used to be her boyfriend, and he's coming to visit, and he's in her bed. And she gets into the bed, and she decides that she wants to kiss him. And she leans into him, and as she's about to kiss him, he turns his head away from her. This is a brilliant piece. And what she does, as you listen to it, listen to the way they have the woman's voice, the man's voice, the woman's voice, the man's voice. And in that way, they force you to slow down and pay attention to the story. And this was actually a prize winner at the Hearsay Festival, which is run by Dermot and Mairead in Ireland, the big radio festival in the small little Irish village. And it was also playing on Shortcuts, which is a programme that Alan Hall produces for BBC Radio 4. This is The Kiss by Caitlin Prest, and you want to hear the way they intercut the man and the woman's voice in order to control the flow of the story.
Can we kiss on the lips? And he said, I think we can do that.
I had been anticipating that kiss for years, since I left.
And it was unremarkable.
The kiss was beautiful.
It felt like we were just doing what we do.
The emotional part of me didn't feel like I could give myself to the kiss.
There was a part of me that was unnerved by the fact that the kiss wasn't good. And then
the way she kisses, it's like she's telling you something. She's listening to you too. And so it started soft.
We slowed all the way down.
Got more and more intense.
And we were in the same rhythm for a moment.
The Kiss by Caitlin Prest. Finally, let's finish with the clap. You ready?